People like you don't buy private jets. She said it to his face. Then she took his purchase agreement, $12.8 million of it, and tore it down the middle right there on the showroom floor. Once, twice. She let the pieces fall at his boots like something she'd scraped off her shoe. He didn't flinch. He looked down at the paper on the marble, then back up at her. You just threw away the best deal you'll ever touch, he said quietly. Call the bank. That's all I'm asking. Security's already coming. You need to leave. He didn't move. He bent down, picked up one torn half, and folded it into his palm. Call them, he said, and when they get here, call your boss too. She laughed. In 7 minutes, she would not be laughing. In 7 minutes, the man whose signature founded this company would walk through those glass doors, see Elias standing there, and go white to the lips. Have you ever watched a person destroy their whole career in a single sentence? Elias Ward drove a pickup older than most of the associates working the floor inside. It pulled a little to the left. The radio caught one station, and that afternoon it played soft gospel. He parked it at the far end of the lot, past the row of cars worth more than the house he'd raised his daughter in, and let the engine tick down. Through the windshield, the showroom glowed, all glass and gold light. A single jet hung under the ceiling spots like a thing in a museum. He was in no hurry. He rarely was. He was 70 years old. His denim jacket was clean but worn soft at the collar. His boots had been resoled twice, polished that morning though the leather had cracked years back. On his left hand, he wore a plain gold band. He had not taken it off in 41 years, not once, not even after Ruth passed. People saw the old truck and the old boots and they decided the rest. They always had. On the passenger seat lay a weathered leather folder, soft as an old glove. Inside it was one certified agreement, $12.8 million, drawn against an account he'd built quietly over a lifetime when nobody was watching. To most men, that number was a dream. To Elias, it was an errand to run before he drove out to the cemetery. He stepped inside at 10 minutes to 5. The air was cool and smelled faintly of leather polish and money. A row of ceiling spots washed the floor white, and the jet threw its long shadow across marble that doubled everything. The lights, the clients, the old man in the denim jacket who did not belong in the reflection. The showroom served a certain kind of buyer. Men in soft gray suits, women in cream heels and quiet gold. Elias looked like none of them, and he felt every eye in the room take his measure and set him aside. Juliana Gilmore saw him the moment the glass swung shut. She was 38, dark hair pulled back sharp, blazer cut clean at the shoulders. She was the top closer 3 quarters running, and she ran her corner of that floor like a private room with an invisible door. Her gaze moved over the jacket, the boots, the folder held in 2 careful hands, and her mouth thinned to a line. She did not come over. She had already decided something about him, and she had not heard him speak. A younger associate named Devin started toward Elias, and Juliana caught his sleeve with 2 fingers. I've got this one, she said. She didn't have it. She just didn't want the good coffee wasted on a man who'd wandered in from the wrong parking lot. Elias waited by a display column, hands folded on the folder, patient as a fence post. 2 minutes. 3. A woman in cream heels glanced at him and glanced away. A client couple near the wing laughed at something, and the sound had a door in it, and he was on the outside of it. When Juliana finally crossed the floor, she did it slowly, heels clicking, chin already lifted. Can I help you find your way somewhere? She said. Not help you. Find your way somewhere. Out was the somewhere she meant. Good afternoon, Elias said, and gave a small nod. I'm here about the G550. I have a certified agreement. I'd like to complete the purchase today. He opened the folder and turned it toward her. Heavy stock, bank letterhead, the numbers printed, clean and dark. She did not look at the number. She looked at his frayed cuff, and she smiled the way people smile when they have already stopped listening. Sir, do you have any idea what an aircraft like that costs? I do, Elias said. It's printed right there. You're welcome to read it. You'd be amazed how many people walk in here with a piece of paper and a story. She let the words hang, pleased with them. Every week, somebody's cousin, somebody's settlement, somebody who found money they don't know how to explain. You can settle this in one call, Elias said. His voice never lifted. The issuing bank's number is at the top of the page. Ask for the officer named there. Give them the reference code and they'll confirm the funds while we stand here. It was a reasonable request, spoken in a reasonable tone, and that more than anything seemed to irritate her. Reasonable was not the story she had already written about him. I'm not calling a bank, Juliana said, because a man in work boots handed me a fantasy. Devin had drifted close enough to hear. He shifted his weight, uneasy. He'd seen the letterhead, but Juliana was 2 rungs above him, and a paycheck is a leash. Elias looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, with something older and quieter, the look of a man who has stood in this exact spot before and knows precisely how much of himself to spend. He had come here carrying more than a folder. Elias grew up in a town in Alabama that taught a black man to keep his voice low and his hands where people could see them. His father laid brick and read the newspaper front to back every night at the kitchen table, mouthing the hard words. Do the work, his father used to say. Let the work speak, even when they won't let it. Elias built a whole life on that sentence. He had also learned, more times than he could count, that the work does not always get to speak. The agreement in that folder was not vanity. Elias did not fly private. He did not want to. He drove the pickup out of habit and grief in roughly equal measure. The G550 was going to a charity, a small outfit that flew critically ill children from towns with no specialists to hospitals that might still save them. A dying girl of 8, 4 hours by ambulance from the only surgeon who could help her, becomes a 40-minute flight. That was the whole of it. That was what the number on the page was for. Ruth had run that charity out of a 2-room office for 19 years. She'd begged foundations for turboprops held together with tape. She died in the spring, in a hospital chair beside a bed that was hers, before she could ever get the aircraft the work deserved. In her last week, she'd held his hand with both of hers, thin as paper, and made him promise. Finish it, Elias. Get them the plane. He'd worn the ring 41 years. He was here to keep the last thing he ever told her he would do. None of that showed on his face. He simply said it again, soft as a closed door. Please, call the bank. Juliana's smile tightened. Across the floor, the client couple had turned fully now, drinks lowered, watching. A man in a golf shirt near the wing lifted his phone and, casual as anything, began to film. A woman drew her handbag a little closer to her hip. Nobody said a word for him. In a room full of people, Elias stood completely alone, and every person there felt it and chose the quiet of the sidelines. Let me guess, Juliana said, leaning in with a thin, knowing smile. You came into some money, a lawsuit, a relative you barely knew. She said it as though generosity itself turned suspect when it landed on a man like him. That's quite a story. You've invented a whole life for me, Elias said, and you haven't gotten one piece of it right. That landed wrong for her. She straightened. I'm going to be honest with you, sir. I think this document is fake. I've handled 1,000 real agreements and this one is not going to check out. Then check it, he said. That's all I've asked. 3 times now. She should have checked it. Any reasonable person would have. But there was an audience now, and audiences push cornered people the wrong way. Devin opened his mouth, a small word forming, and Juliana cut him off without looking. Go help the Hendersons, Devin. He went, cheeks red, and hated himself a little for going. Juliana held the folder away from her body, 2 fingers, like something pulled from a drain. Whose name is even on this? She said. Because I promise you, it's not going to be yours. Read it, Elias said quietly. So she read it. Her eyes tracked the printed name, and for half a heartbeat, the certainty in her face slipped. Something there did not match the story she'd built. Then she shoved the doubt back down, because backing off now meant admitting she'd been wrong. loudly, in front of a filming crowd and the clients she was mid-sale with. So she did what cornered people do. She doubled down. Names can be printed, she announced, lifting the folder for the whole room like evidence at a trial. Anyone with a laptop can print a name on a page. I've been doing this 15 years, and I'm telling all of you this is a forgery. The word carried across the marble. A few heads nodded, the comfort of a crowd agreeing with itself. Elias looked at the paper, trembling in her grip, then at her knuckles going white around it. He had watched a great many people talk themselves past the point of no return. He did not step back. In 70 years, he had never once given a person like her the satisfaction of his fear. She did not wait for permission, and she did not look for the truth. She looked at him, and she tore the agreement in half. The sound was small and final. She tore it again, slower the second time, watching his face for a break that never came. The pieces fluttered down between them, heavy stalks settling on marble around a pair of cracked but polished boots. "People like you don't buy private jets," she said, and she let the last scrap drop. Elias did not raise his voice. He did not raise his hand. He looked down at the ruined paper, then lifted his eyes to hers, calm as still water. "You just threw away the best deal you'll ever touch," he said, almost kindly, which was somehow worse. Her smile flickered, then hardened over the crack. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said. "I'm telling you what happens next. There's a difference, and you're about to learn it." That was when she reached for her phone. Not the store line, her own. Pulled from her blazer, 3 digits punched hard enough to hear. "Yes, I need someone at Meridian Aviation on Halloran," a man refusing to leave. "He presented fraudulent documents, and he's making me feel unsafe." None of it was true. She said it looking straight at him, her voice climbing for the dispatcher and the crowd at once. Elias stood 4 feet away, hands folded, shoulders low. A child could have seen there was no danger in him. But the word unsafe has a weight all its own, and she swung it like a hammer. More phones rose. The little red dots multiplied. "Give them the reference code while you've got them," Elias said. "It's printed at the bottom of the agreement you just tore up. They'll want it for the report." She turned her shoulder to him, as if she could delete him by facing away. "Marcus," Juliana said, snapping her fingers toward the door. "I need this handled." The security guard by the entrance was a big man, easy in his own size. Marcus Bell had watched the whole thing from 10 feet away, and he knew the difference between a threat and an old man with a folder. But a paycheck is a leash, and hers was close to the hand that signed his. He crossed the floor and closed a wide hand around Elias's arm. "Come on, sir, let's step outside." Elias did not resist. He let himself be turned toward the doors, moving with the slow dignity of a man who decided long ago that he would not run for anyone. But he spoke low, meant only for the guard. "Son, you're going to remember this day for the rest of your life." Something in it made Marcus's grip loosen half an inch. He didn't let go. But he felt it, the way you feel a wrong turn a second before the map confirms it. He glanced back at Juliana. She was still on the phone, chin high, bright-eyed, with the certainty of someone who has never once been made to pay. Devin stepped out from behind a display. "Juliana." His voice shook, but it carried. "We can just call the bank. I'll call it myself. Right now." "One more word," she said. "Hand over the phone, and you can clear your desk with him." The young man froze between his conscience and his rent, and the room watched him lose a fight he was too new to win. No one else moved. Not the man in the golf shirt, filming in landscape now for the better frame. Not the woman with the handbag. Not the client couple who had stopped pretending this was anything but the best show they'd seen all year. A whole floor of comfortable people, each waiting for someone braver to go first. That is how it always happens. Not with a mob, with an audience. Near the wing, 2 associates leaned together, and one of them laughed, quick and quiet, behind his hand. It was that laugh, more than the grip on his arm, more than the paper on the floor. The comfortable laughter of people certain all the way down that the world had sorted everyone correctly and that the old man had landed exactly where he belonged. Elias let the guard walk him 3 steps toward the glass. Inside, he was very still. He thought of his father's hands, gray with brick dust, turning newspaper pages nobody believed he could read. He thought of Ruth's 2 thin hands around his. He thought, this is not the worst they have done to me. And then, almost gently, this will be the last time they do it here. In his right hand, folded into his palm, was the single torn scrap he had picked up, a corner of the agreement, a fragment of a number too large for this room to believe. He held it like a man holds the one true thing in a house of liars. Behind him, Juliana ended the call and slid the phone away. They're on their way, she announced to the floor, to the cameras, to herself. You're all welcome. Marcus reached out and pushed the glass door open. Cool evening air slid across the marble, and in that exact moment, a second figure stepped through from the other side. He came in fast, the way a man moves when he's already late, a leather satchel in one hand, a lanyard swinging at his chest, tall, silver at the temples, a charcoal suit that fit like it was grown on him. He stopped 1 pace inside the door. He looked at the guard. He looked at the old man being marched out by the arm, and every drop of color left his face. His name was Gregory Whitfield, and he had founded Meridian Aviation 31 years ago with 2 mechanics and a leased hangar. He'd driven 90 minutes for a meeting he could not miss. He knew the face in the guard's grip. He had shaken that hand across a boardroom table more times than he could count. The satchel slipped from his fingers and hit the marble with a flat, loud slap. Mr. Ward. The name came out cracked, barely above a whisper, and it stopped the entire showroom cold. Marcus felt his own certainty die in his hand, and he let go at once. Juliana looked up, still half smiling, not yet understanding. Mr. Whitfield. We had a situation. A fraudulent... Stop talking. Gregory did not shout. He crossed the marble fast, straightening his jacket as he came, and stopped in front of Elias with his head slightly bowed. Sir, I am so sorry. I didn't know you were coming in today. If I had known, I would have been standing at that door myself. The word sir from that man to this man landed in the room like a stone through glass. A phone camera caught it. That clip would outlive every person standing there. You could watch the understanding move through the crowd 1 face at a time. The man in the golf shirt lowered his phone, then raised it again, sensing the story had just gotten bigger than he was. The client who laughed took a slow step back, and Juliana Gilmore, behind her invisible door, felt the first cold finger of a fear she did not yet have a name for. Elias bent, unhurried, and picked up Gregory's fallen satchel. He held it out with both hands, the way you return something to a friend. Good to see you, Gregory, he said. Though I'll be honest with you, your Halloran showroom could use some work. He glanced back once at the torn stock scattered on the marble. We should talk about that, all of us. Gregory took the satchel and did not seem to know what to do with his hands afterward. 90 minutes ago, he'd rehearsed this meeting in the car. The numbers, the pitch, the careful courtesies. He had not rehearsed finding the man himself pinned by a guard in his own lobby. Juliana came around the display with a bright, brittle smile, the one she used on auditors. Mr. Whitfield, I'm so glad you're here. We caught a fraud attempt. This man tried to pass a fake $12 million agreement. Gregory looked at her the way you look at someone standing in the middle of a highway. Do you know who this is? A customer who became aggressive, she said, though her smile was already slipping. I followed protocol. I called the police. You called the police. He closed his eyes a moment, as if the floor had shifted. Juliana, this is Elias Ward. The name meant nothing to her, and it showed. So he gave her the rest, slowly, so the whole listening room could have it too. Mr. Ward put the money into this company 30 years ago, when we were 1 bad quarter from closing the doors for good. When no bank in this state would return my calls, he returned mine. He owns 23% of Meridian Aviation. He let it sit. The man you had dragged toward that door owns more of this company than anyone in this building except me. The blood was leaving Juliana's face now, a slow tide going out. And that jet, Gregory went on, gesturing helplessly at the ruined paper on the marble. He wasn't buying it for himself. But that's not even why I drove out here today. He drew a breath. We're 9 days from closing a $900 million expansion with his fund. 3 new facilities, 4,000 jobs. I came to sign it with him. He looked at the scraps. That agreement you tore up and threw at his chest was him buying his own charity, a plane at his own company. For a moment, no one in the room breathed. I didn't know, Juliana said. Her voice had lost its edge and found a thinner one. He didn't say who he was. He came in dressed like... She stopped one heartbeat too late. Like what? Elias asked. It was the first thing he'd said in a while, and the quiet of it cut deeper than a shout. Finish the sentence. Everyone's listening. She could not. Not with the phones up and the founder standing there and her own words already looping in a dozen recordings. I was following protocol, she tried, retreating to the only sentence she had left. Protocol, Elias said gently, doesn't tell you to tear up a man's agreement and throw it in his face. That part was yours. You added that yourself. He crouched then, slow and deliberate, and began to gather the torn stock from the floor, one piece, then another, into his cupped palm. Gregory started forward to help, and Elias lifted one hand, a small motion that stopped a company founder in his track. He wanted to pick them up himself. He wanted the room to watch him do it. Dignity, his father had told him once, is not handed to you. Sometimes you kneel down and gather it off the floor with your own hands. He rose with the pieces in his fist and looked, for the first time, at the whole crowd. Not with anger, with something quieter and heavier. Every one of you watched, he said. He did not need to raise his voice. Not one of you asked a single question. His eyes found Devin, still frozen by the display. One young man tried. Remember him. The rest of you looked away. Devin began to cry without a sound. Gregory turned to the guard. Marcus, go to the door and wait for the police. When they arrive, you tell them exactly what happened here. All of it. Then to Juliana, in a voice gone very flat and very final. And you, my office. Don't touch your computer. Don't touch your phone. Don't say another word to anyone. But Juliana did not move. Something desperate crossed her face. The look of a person watching a life rearrange itself in real time. Mr. Whitfield, please. Let me explain in private. This is a misunderstanding. He shook his head slowly. The decision had already settled over him like cold water. No, you did this in public. You'll answer for it in public. He drew a breath. Juliana Gilmore, you're terminated. Effective now. Your badge and your keys on the counter. You will not log into anything. Everything at your station is part of an investigation as of this second. Her mouth opened. You can't just... I can. I'm the only person in this building who can, and I'm doing it now. She looked around the showroom, searching the faces that had nodded along with her 10 minutes before. Not one of them met her eyes. The clients studied the floor. The private room she had run had voted, silently, and she was no longer a member. She had shown the whole floor that a person could simply be erased, and now the floor was practicing on her. The glass doors opened again, and 2 police officers stepped in, hands near their belts, scanning for the aggressive man from the call. What they found was a showroom gone silent, a founder in a charcoal suit, and an old man holding torn paper in his cupped hand. We got a call about a fraud in progress, the first officer said. A threat to an employee. You did, Gregory said. The call was false. I'd like to report the person who made it. The document was genuine. The customer did nothing but ask 3 times to have it verified. She refused, tore up his property, and made a false emergency call claiming he was dangerous. The word false does heavy work in a police report. Filing one is not a mistake. It is a crime, and everyone in that showroom had just watched it happen. Near the wing, the associate who laughed had gone the color of paper. "I want to be clear," he said quickly. "I wasn't involved. I was just at my station." "You laughed," Devin answered from across the floor. His voice was steady now, wet but steady. "It's all on video." He came out and stood in front of the officers without being asked. "I saw the whole thing." He was polite. He offered 3 times to have it checked. "She refused, and then she tore it up and called you." He looked at Elias. "I'm sorry, sir. I should have stood up sooner." "You stood up," Elias said. "You were the only one who did. Don't carry the rest of them on your shoulders." None of them fully understood yet that it was already gone. The first clip hit the internet before the officers had finished parking. A 10-second cut of a sales director throwing torn paper into an old man's face, captioned in "outrage," was multiplying across screens in cities none of them would ever visit. By the time Juliana reached the parking lot, 40,000 strangers had already decided who she was. By morning, the clip had a name. People were calling it the Halloran video, and it had been watched more times overnight than the town it happened in had residents. By noon, it wasn't a local story. It was the story. News vans lined the avenue outside a showroom that had gone dark and locked its doors. They said his name on the morning programs. Elias Ward, the quiet investor who managed billions and drove a 20-year-old pickup, humiliated on a showroom floor over an aircraft that was already, in every way that mattered, partly his. Meridian felt it before its own suppliers opened for business. When the company pulled Juliana Gilmore's record, a pattern surfaced that made the lawyers go quiet. Buyers flagged as fraud who had no business being flagged. Customers turned away who closed clean deals at rival showrooms a week later. A quiet trail of people, most of them black, most of them told in one way or another that they did not belong. It was not one bad afternoon. It was a habit wearing the uniform of policy. The consequences arrived in the order such things do. The state opened an inquiry into the false report. The district attorney filed a charge because a fabricated claim that an innocent man is dangerous can get someone hurt, and the law treats it as the crime it is. Her name attached itself to the video and would not come off, and the internet does not forget the way people used to. 30 years she'd spent climbing to that floor. She would not stand on another one like it. She sat once for an interview with a sympathetic blog and called herself the real victim, a woman punished for enforcing the rules. She said she'd been made an example of. She wasn't wrong about that last part, though not in the way she meant. The public set that clip beside the footage of her tearing the agreement and reached a verdict in an afternoon. Elias could have let the company drown. It would have been easy, and no one would have blamed him. A single phone call would have moved $900 million to any of a dozen rivals who would never once ask what he was wearing. Instead, he did something the board did not expect. He kept the partnership on the table, but he attached a price that had nothing to do with money. Every Meridian showroom would overhaul how it treated every person who walked through its doors. Real training, real oversight. A way for anyone turned away unfairly to be heard by someone who would actually listen and answered. And the jet, once the agreement was reissued and finally signed, went where he had always meant it to go, to Ruth's charity. He asked that it carry her name on the fuselage, small, near the door, where the families climbing aboard would see it. And he asked that the very first flight lift off from the field nearest the Halloran showroom, so that the place that had tried to throw him out would spend its days sending sick children toward the surgeons who could save them. Devin did not lose his job. He was the one person on that floor who had asked the question, and Gregory made sure the right people knew it. Within the year, he was training new associates himself, and the first thing he taught them was the thing he'd learned the hard way. You don't get to choose when courage is convenient. The moment finds you ready or it doesn't. And the room remembers which. The Halloran video kept working long after the news vans left. It turned up in company trainings and college classrooms, a case study with a human face. People who had done what that showroom did looked away, stayed comfortable, saw themselves in it, and did not like the view. That was the part no lawsuit could deliver. Not the money, not the charge, just a great many people quietly deciding to be braver the next time. 3 months later, on an ordinary Tuesday, Elias Ward parked his old pickup outside the Meridian showroom on Halloran. The radio was still stuck on the one gospel station. His jacket was still soft at the collar. Nothing about him had changed at all, which was, in its own quiet way, the whole point. He lifted the leather folder from the passenger seat and walked toward the same glass doors. The floor looked the same. Same marble, same ceiling spots, same jet hung under the lights, but the air had shifted, the way a house feels different after an honest conversation. A greeter met him 3 steps inside, warm and unhurried. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome in. What can we help you with today?" It was a small sentence. It was also the sentence no one had offered him the last time. Near the manager's new desk hung a sign in plain language, a customer's rights, and a name and a number to call if those rights were ever ignored. Elias paused to read it. He had negotiated harder things than that sign into being, and he was prouder of it than of most deals he'd ever closed. Rules don't fix people, but good rules make cruelty expensive, and sometimes that is enough to change a room. Devin saw him from across the floor and came over at once, not nervous now, just glad. "Mr. Ward, it's good to see you. You're still here," Elias said. "I am. They put me in charge of training. I think that was your doing." "No," Elias said. "That was yours. You earned it standing at a station when it would have been easier to sit down." He walked to the counter, opened the folder, and slid a new agreement across. Heavy stock, printed clean, the numbers crisp and dark, the same kind of paper that had been torn and thrown at his chest in this exact spot. This time, the young associate behind the counter read the name, looked up, and smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Ward. Give me just one moment to take care of this for you." No suspicion, no performance, just the work done plainly. Marcus Bell still worked the door, though he carried himself differently now. He gave Elias a nod that held more than a nod usually does. On the far wall hung a new plaque, small and plain, naming the charity that flew out of this field. Near the counter, a young woman was opening her first account with the company, exactly the kind of buyer a sales director had once decided did not belong. She belonged. The room made sure she knew it. Gregory Whitfield had kept his word and then some. The training Elias asked for ran in every Meridian showroom in the country now. Gregory had sat through the first session himself, front row, taking notes like a man determined not to be surprised twice. The $900 million expansion had closed on schedule. 4,000 jobs. It turned out the company was worth more, not less, once it remembered who its customers were. Elias never watched the whole video. He didn't need to. He had lived the 10 seconds that mattered. But he hoped the people who did watch it carried something away, not anger, something more useful. For the next time, they were the only one in a room who saw. He thought of Ruth then, the way he did most days, her 2 thin hands around his in that hospital chair. Finish it. Get them the plane. Somewhere over a dark stretch of country that night, a girl of 8 who had 4 hours by ambulance between her and the only surgeon who could help her would make the trip in 40 minutes in an aircraft with his wife's name beside the door. He had kept the promise. That was the deal that mattered. The rest was just paper. When the agreement was done, Elias thanked the associate, tucked the empty folder under his arm, and walked back out into the afternoon light. He had a garden to water and a Sunday visit to plan. Behind him, the showroom went on with its ordinary day, a little kinder than it had been the season before. One man had refused to shout and refused to leave until the truth caught up with him. That is how it usually works, quietly. In the end, I made Elias up, but I did not make up the feeling of walking into a room and watching someone decide who you are before you've said a single word. A lot of you have lived that. Here's what stays with me. He never raised his voice. He just refused to leave until the truth reached the door. So let me ask you honestly, if you'd been standing on that showroom floor, would you have looked away, or would you have been the one who asked the question? Tell me below. And if this one moved you, send it to someone who needs it today.